Well, you're going to see a story today, a story of a friend of mine of 28 years. And I've walked through some significant life events with him. There was college, then there was a divorce, and then him being a single dad, and a wedding, and also one of the darkest times that any parent would ever have to walk through. He's now a youth pastor in Tennessee, and I could not be more proud of my friend Bart. You're going to see some of his story today.
We were easily becoming known as, that's the guy who lost a child. That's the guy who lost a child in that car accident. And we didn't want that to be what defined us. We wanted to be pointing people to faith, and that there was more opportunity to come from that. But it was only going to come if we were all in. And there wasn't going to be something that we could just give pieces of it to God. We had to give the whole entire thing to Him. It was Sunday morning early, and I get a phone call from a random stranger that just says, your kids have been in an accident. My two oldest, Jake and Hannah, were traveling back to my place after the weekend, and they were in a car accident. And Jake was thrown from the vehicle. He suffered a broken leg. Hannah had injuries that were much more severe. And I can remember very early on the doctor, one of the doctors just saying, odds are she's not going to make it. And I remember having a conversation with my dad the day before, and he said to me, it's just me and him in the waiting room, I don't think Hannah's gonna make it, but it's gonna be okay. From there, we came home and began that process of new life, trying to begin a new life without Hannah in it. And we had a choice we had to make of, do we want this to be something that we're bitter about, or do we want this to be something that we're blessed from? And we chose the blessing route, and we felt like we only do that because of God being at the center of what we're doing. If I could have a conversation with Hannah now, I'd love for her to meet Mabry. That's the one thing that if I could change, it's that her getting to meet Mabry would be very awesome.
I always wanted to see Hannah, but Hannah's always in my heart and in my prayers.
I'm glad that I can look at Mabry and see some of her features. I can see some of her personality.
This was Hannah's, and she named her Cupcake because I think she liked cupcakes a lot. She's special because she was my sister's. Even though I didn't get to see her, I got to keep her stuffed animal.
Although life has gone on, that we haven't forgotten about her, and that we tried to make it a point for Mabry to still know her, even though she didn't get to meet her. I think that's important.
This one was Hannah's because it has her name in it, and I put my name in it too. And we found it out in the garage with the old books, and it's one of my favorite Bibles.
One of the things I think that we don't value enough is that God hears us when we cry. God hears us when we're not in a good place. When tragedy hits, God is as present and as close then as He is at any other time with His people. And that's something that has been His pattern throughout history. Anytime God's people have cried out to Him, He's heard and He's responded. And so there's great power in that, and there's great hope in that.
When tragedy hits, let those around you support you. Let your family, let your community just build you up. And let them help you, let them do for you. If they offer, let them pray with you.
Yeah, I don't know where we would be without our community. Faith was never designed to be done alone, and I don't know where we would be without our community that has surrounded us. From those we knew then to those who didn't know us, who now know us now, that we would call our core people. We're grateful that they've been very supportive along the way, and I think because we've stepped into this is our story, this is part of who we are. We've been able to have conversations with people that we probably would not have had, or we've had relationships with people that we probably would not have had. And again, we're grateful for those people, but ultimately we're grateful that God has worked in those areas and cultivated something out of nothing. Even though she's no longer with us here, she's no longer with us somewhere else. There's a new world, a new heaven that we've been promised. And if we'll step into that faith, we know we'll get to see her again there. And that's exciting, and that's forever. Death doesn't have any space in that world. So.
It's at the darkest times that God's light has a chance to shine. Last month, as I sat with Bart and Cary and little Mabry, and I heard that story again, I was reminded. I was taken back to the days at the hospital with them when all that tragedy was happening. And even then, I remember how bitterness never took hold in their hearts. And as I've kept in touch with them through the years, just hearing how they choose to find celebration in the middle of tragedy. It's true that God's light shines through the darkness. They refused bitterness and allowed God to walk with them in their relationship with Jesus Christ. And this story tells us one thing: the light of God will always overcome the darkness. And that's what Easter's all about. It's the light of Christ bursting through the darkness, proving truth, providing hope, rescuing us, showing us that Jesus' words were true and we can be rescued from our sins. You know, I never thought we would be celebrating Easter the way we are, with me speaking to a camera and you watching it on a screen. But today, we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate the life that Jesus brings to all of us because of his resurrection. And whether you're sitting with your family on the couch, having this projected up onto your TV screen, whether you're a couple around your computer, or you're a single person sitting there watching it on your phone, I pray that you find hope. I pray that you find direction. And I pray that you can celebrate that God's light always drives out darkness, just like it did in that story that you saw. And today we're going to ask you to do a couple things. We're going to ask you, those of you who are ready, those of you that feel convicted, those of you that feel like today's the day I'm going to make a decision to follow Jesus Christ, we're going to ask you to do that. We're going to provide an opportunity at the end of this service for you to do that. We're also going to provide an opportunity that we provide every Easter, and that is for you to follow Christ in baptism. And I'll explain what that is and how you can respond in just a few minutes. But today, as we celebrate the resurrection of Christ, as we acknowledge all that he is to us and all that this means to us, may you feel the hope, the forgiveness, the direction, the peace, and the light that he brings to all of us. We're going to pick up the resurrection story at the tomb of Jesus. We're going to read about one of his disciples who had gone to his tomb thinking Jesus was still dead, to make sure that he was getting a proper burial. It's recorded in the New Testament book of John, chapter 20. And if you're sitting on the couch with your parents, get close to them. If you have your Bible with you, open it up to John chapter 20, and let's read through that together. It says this: "Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter, the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, they've taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and I don't know where they've put him. Immediately, she comes to the tomb. His body's gone. She goes and tells the others, and they do what we often do. They assume the worst. They automatically assumed somebody has come overnight and they've taken his body and they've put it somewhere and we don't know where it is. And she goes and she says to the others, what are we going to do about this? The unexpected had happened. They were unsure. They were uncertain. And it was a dark time in their lives. You know, we do the same thing. When things get dark in our lives, when we get uncertain, when we get filled with fear or anxiety, we tend to assume the worst thing that could possibly happen, and then we start thinking about it. But here's the truth about assuming the worst. When I assume the worst, I can miss out on God's best. When I'm assuming the worst, I can miss out on God's best guidance, on God's comfort, on his love, on the light that he wants to bring into my life, if all I'm doing is assuming the worst like they were that day. I mean, they had every reason to, because their dark world just got darker. They had been following Jesus. He was crucified. They saw him die. And now they can't find his body. And their dark world just got darker. Some of them left. They doubted, and they were done. All but Mary. She's left at the tomb, looking in and crying. Why do you think she stayed? If you know about Mary Magdalene, you know that Jesus found her at a dark time in her life. You know that her life was full of sin. And Jesus picked her up out of darkness and gave her hope and gave her forgiveness and showed her love and showed her acceptance. No wonder she followed him this far. And here she is standing at the tomb and crying. When all of a sudden she's looking into this empty tomb and there's two other figures in there. It's two angels. And they ask her, woman, why are you crying? They know what's happened. She doesn't. And here's how she responds in John chapter 20, verse 13. Because they've taken my Lord away, she replied, and I don't know where they've put him. See, we know the end of the story. We know that Jesus has risen from the dead. She doesn't know that. The angels know that. That's why they're asking, why are you crying? Everything that he said was going to happen just happened. Why are you crying? And she's focused on, his body is not here. I can't give my Lord the proper burial. I can't make sure he's buried correctly. I don't know where he is. She thinks it's over. She thinks the movement is over. She thinks her time with Jesus is over. She thinks that everything she had believed and trusted in was over. And you've probably been there, where you think it's done, it's over, it's finished, it's never going to be the same. And you're left longing for what could have been or what used to be. And if you've been there, you know what a dark place that can be. That's where Mary was that Sunday morning. She was focusing on her fear and her pain. And her focus on her fear, her anxiety, her pain, her loss was causing her to miss something, and it was something big. Verse 14 of John chapter 20 says, she turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. Dear woman, why are you crying? Jesus asked her. Who are you looking for? She thought he was the gardener. Sir, she said, if you've taken him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will go get him. Now, my question is, when I read this, how did she not know that was Jesus? Jesus, who had done so much for her. Jesus, who had picked her up out of her darkness and made her whole and forgave her and provided her grace and understanding and forgiveness and mercy. And she was right there in his presence and didn't even recognize. Why was that? It's because she was so focused on the darkness. She was so focused on what had gone wrong, she couldn't see what was going right. She was so focused on all the pain, all the questions, all the doubt, all the worry that was inside of her. She was missing that Jesus was standing right there beside of her. All along, all she had to do was open up her eyes and see. But Jesus does it for her. He does it for her with one word, and it's her name. As she's standing there saying, if you tell me where he is, I will go get him. She's not thinking, how am I going to carry his body? How am I going to bring him back here? She is just thinking, I want to know where my Lord is. I want to give him a proper burial. She doesn't even realize she's saying that to Jesus. She's probably speaking hysterically out of her worry and her anguish. And all of a sudden, and no doubt, a bold tone of voice, she hears the word, Mary. Jesus said, she turned to him and cried out, Rabboni, which means teacher. So in the middle of her looking down, in the middle of her anxiety, in the middle of her saying, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? What are we going to do next? What does the future look like? He says, Mary, it's me, listen. And in an instant, everything changed. In an instant, all of the darkness in her life was gone. In an instant, everything changed. She heard Jesus say her name and realized he has been right here with me. Everything he said was going to happen, happened. He's not dead, he's alive. And here's what that means for us. When Jesus speaks into your life, things change. When he speaks into your life and you hear him, things change. When you look up from whatever it is that scares you, whatever it is you're going through, whatever pain, whatever disappointment, whatever difficulty life has thrown at you, when you look up from that and hear the voice of Jesus, everything changes just like it did for her. She was no longer looking for his body. She was looking for a live Jesus, looking at a live Jesus standing right in front of her. And everything can change in our life when we just look up enough to hear the voice of Jesus. She was expecting death, and she found new life. She was coming to the tomb expecting to mourn, and she left celebrating. She came there hopeless, and she left full of hope. She came in darkness and left in light. Her day started in tragedy, but it ended in triumph. It started with her thinking, what am I going to do? And it ended with her thinking, Jesus is exactly who he claimed to be, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. The same can be true for you and for me. Because here's what the resurrection of Jesus Christ tells us. The light of God will always overcome darkness. The light of God will always overcome darkness, no matter where it is, no matter what you've been through, no matter what's going on. You have a choice. Even now, with the darkness in our world, do I focus on all the voices around me, or do I focus on the one voice, the only voice that can drive out the darkness in my life? Which one am I going to listen to? You know, this past week I was talking to my friend Bart, whose story you just saw, and I was saying, hey, this is what I'm talking about. What do you think? And when I texted him that phrase, the light of God will always overcome darkness, he texted back, the darkest dark allows light to shine the brightest. The darkest dark always allows the light to shine the brightest. And I've watched that happen in his life and others' lives. You know, Bart and Cary had a choice that could have destroyed them and defeated them. And while it did alter the course of their life, it did not make them bitter. One thing that they do that got me even thinking about sharing this story with you. Every year on December 23rd, it's the anniversary of Hannah's death, December 23rd, 2003. Every year, they could choose to have a day of mourning. They could choose to have a day where they sit in darkness. But they flipped it and they changed what December 23rd was all about. No longer is it a day that they dread. No longer is it a day that they are fearful of showing up every year just before Christmas, because now in their family, December 23rd is Hannah Day. It's the day they celebrate her life. It's the day they celebrate Hannah getting to go to heaven and be with Jesus. It's the day they wear her favorite color. It's the day they look at pictures. It's the day they eat the foods that she liked. It's the day that they celebrate the time they had with their sweet daughter, Hannah. It could have gone a completely different direction. It could have been stories of pain and separation and hurt and years of agony. But instead, it's a story of celebration. Not celebrating that they lost their daughter, but celebrating that they know where she is and that God's light can push all the darkness out of their life, even in the middle of a tragedy like they experienced. The same thing can happen for you. I don't know what darkness you're dealing with or what's happening in your life, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It can change. Whatever you're walking through, whatever fears, you can choose to let the light of Jesus chase the darkness out of your life. See, there at the tomb that day, Jesus was letting Mary Magdalene know, I am here, I am alive, I love you, I see you, there is hope, I speak words of truth. And he lets us know the same thing. He lets us know that our lives have value, that any failure that we experience is not fatal. And he also lets us know that death, because of the resurrection, is not final. So Mary goes and starts telling others, I've seen the Lord. I've seen Jesus. I mean, wouldn't you? If somebody that was dead talked to you, you would probably tell people about it. I could not keep it to myself. And so she gets up and she goes and tells the rest of them, I have seen the Lord. You'll never have to live in darkness again. You'll never have to worry again. You'll never have to not have answers to your questions again, because I have seen the Lord. She would say to us, he assures you that he's with you. He speaks your name and he drives darkness away. The light of God will always overcome the darkness. The darkness that exists in tragedy, in pain, in confusion, and in disappointment. Even the darkness that exists in our world today. You know, I know that if you haven't experienced job loss, you know someone who has. If you're not going to work every day concerned about your health, if you're one of the frontline workers, then you know someone who has. And you know someone who does that. There's a lot happening in our world that gives us a reason to be filled with fear. Whether we're disappointed that events have not gone the way we hoped, that school's not going to finish the way we thought it would, that the wedding's not going to be like we thought it was going to be. And it can be easy to start to get like Mary and be focused on the dark things that are happening all around us. For one of the rare times in history, we can all relate. We can all relate to having a little bit of fear or a lot. We can relate to some anxiety. We can relate to not knowing how everything's going to play out. We can also relate to having the light of God in our life. And while there is so much out of our control right now, if we listen for the right voice, the voice of life, we can experience new life. We don't have to live in darkness. We don't have to live in fear. In spite of the challenges that we might face, we can live with hope. Whether your challenges have to do with what's going on in our world right now, or your challenges have to do with something else that's been in your life for a long time, you can get past it And the light of God can push the darkness out. It can make you an overcomer. It can help you put your past behind you. And it can make a difference. And instead of being bitter, you can choose to receive blessing because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the beauty of that is change can come just like it did for Mary in an instant. The moment she realized Jesus' voice, everything changed. Darkness turned into light. And that can happen for you. You know, usually when we meet on Easter, it's full rooms, it's a lot of people, and we have a song when I finish. And we say, if you were moved today by his Holy Spirit to come and respond to the message, come down front and pray. Come down front and let us know that you want to follow Jesus. Come down front and we have the baptistries ready and you can be baptized today. That's usually what we do. There's no aisle to walk down or no stage to kneel in front of. There's no prayer counselor that will put their hand on your shoulder and pray for you, but we can still push through the darkness and you can still make a decision because God's light always wins. Depending on how you're watching this, on what kind of screen, there's a prayer tab somewhere down near the bottom, and you can click on that, and we have people there ready to pray with you. All you have to do is say, I need to pray. I'm ready to receive Christ. I want the darkness out of my life, and we'll guide you through that decision, and we'll get in touch with you today. And for those of you who have already decided, I want Jesus in my life. I want to claim the forgiveness and grace and mercy that only he can offer. I want that light guiding me instead of the darkness that's all around me. If that's you, then maybe it's time for you to be baptized. And if you don't know what baptism is simply this. It is a physical act. It is a symbol that shows our complete and total surrender to Jesus Christ. It shows that we are receiving his love, his grace, and his eternal forgiveness that he offers to everyone. And the act of baptism looks like this. Someone standing in water, they're lowered into the water, and they're raised, like the Bible says, to walk a new life. That can be you today. And you might be thinking, how in the world are you going to do that? I'm sitting in my living room. If you will text baptism to the number on the screen right below me, or follow the link if you're in chat right now. It'll take you to a form and you can fill it out. And we have a way that's as safe as possible where you will be baptized in water that only you're baptized in, nobody else. You can follow Jesus that way today. We have a bunch of different schedule slots open that you can take advantage of. And if we don't get it done today, we'll take it into tomorrow and we'll do it then. But if you're ready, or even if you have questions. And if you're not local to our area in Raleigh, North Carolina, then let us know. And you want to make this decision and you're not local, let us know and we'll connect you with a church somewhere that can help you take that step of faith. I want you to take a few minutes and think about what I've just said. The band's going to play a song and I want you to just read the words on the screen. Let them speak to your heart. Let God speak through those words to speak to you on whatever decision you need to make as we celebrate and acknowledge the resurrection of Christ and that the light of God will always overcome darkness.
Go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring, but I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above every fear. Like the sun shaping the shadows, in my weakness your glory appears. Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Oh, again. Meet me here Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Oh, in this I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough. I'm not enough
Hey, wherever you are today, thank you so much for watching Lifepointe Online. If you made a decision today or you need to talk more about your decision, simply text baptism to that number below or contact us on any of our social media platforms, or you can email us at info@lifepointechurch.com. Have a great Resurrection Sunday, and we hope you're right back here next week.